Most people think ghosts are echoes. But what if something older, emptier, learned how to mimic us? What if it remembers how we move, how we smile, but not why? And what if, one evening, it calls your name and you answer? We're not afraid of the dark. We're afraid of what waits just before it. It's been 10 years now, yet I still feel the weight of that dusk pressing against my chest like damp earth. Back then, I was only a child, barefoot and full of laughter. Most of my afternoons were spent chasing dragonflies through the open fields with my friends, our feet dusty and our voices rising with joy. The field behind our village felt like an endless place, a world of its own, where time slowed and rules didn't matter. The only thing that ever pulled us back was the sun slipping away and our parents' angry calls echoing through the quietening streets. They used to yell at us for returning late. Every evening the same scolding. And yet, we always stayed a little longer, always ran a little slower on the way back. That day was no different, until everything changed. It was the tail end of summer, when the air still held warmth, but the evenings arrived faster. That day, we had stayed out too long again. The sun had nearly disappeared, and the field had already begun to fade into shadow. Realizing the time, we broke into a run, laughing nervously, trying to outrun the night. Then someone called my name, not loudly, not like a shout. It was soft, almost like a whisper that had teeth. I stopped, confused. My friends kept running ahead, their silhouettes already vanishing into the tree-lined path. I called out to them, telling them I'd catch up. The voice had come from behind, close enough to be real, too close to ignore. The field had grown quiet now. The sounds of crickets had begun, and the last light of the day clung to the edges of the grass. I turned slowly, and there he was, John. He stood near a tree we often used as a goalpost, but he wasn't supposed to be there. Just yesterday, he'd left with his college friends to visit the sea. Everyone had waved him off, laughing as he climbed into the bus. But now, he stood calmly, almost like he had never left. I asked when he came back. He said only a few hours ago. He needed a favor, he said. Something important at home, but no one else was there. Would I come with him? I should have walked away. I should have remembered how strange his voice had sounded. Flat, without the usual energy. And there was something odd about the way he stood, like his feet were too still, too planted. But I nodded. I followed. We walked the old road to his house in silence. Usually, John was full of stories, always pointing things out, laughing at nothing. But this time, he didn't say a word. His steps were steady, but the sound of them felt hollow, like something was walking through him, not with him. The sky above turned quickly from purple to deep blue, and the wind had gone completely. I remember feeling cold, even though it was summer. Not the kind of cold that touches your skin, but the kind that settles deeper under the ribs. When we reached his house, something in me clenched. I had been there many times before, but this time it looked different. The windows were dark and empty. The paint on the walls looked older than it should have been. Even the air around the place smelled wrong, like old, salty water. I told him I couldn't stay. I said I'd come back tomorrow, but he insisted. He said it had to be now. There was something in his tone that made my stomach turn. I shook my head. I said no again, and then he changed. He turned to me quickly, and his voice, which had been flat and quiet, suddenly burst out loud and sharp, like it had been forced through a crack in stone. I can still hear it. It wasn't just loud, it was wrong. Like too many voices tangled together, shouting through his throat. That was the moment I saw his face clearly, and I froze. His eyes, they weren't his anymore. They were completely black. Not shadowed, not bruised, just black. No whites, no irises, no pupils. Just deep, endless pits where I should be. My body stopped listening to me. My legs wouldn't move. My voice died in my throat, and then darkness. I woke up in a hospital bed 2 days later. The lights hurt my eyes. My mouth was dry. My parents sat by my side, their faces worn and swollen from tears. Later, in pieces, I learned what happened that night. Around midnight, when I hadn't returned, my parents began to panic. My father went to Alex's house first, thinking maybe I had wandered there. But when he asked Alex if he had seen me, the boy looked confused. He told my father I had left with John. My father froze. Everyone in the village had already heard by then. John had drowned in the ocean that morning, pulled under by a sudden current. They'd found his body before sunset, bloated and pale, his arms stretched out as if he had been reaching for something he could never grasp. But I had seen him, talked to him, walked with him. My father gathered a group of villagers. They searched the whole area, fields, paths, even the riverbanks. Hours passed with nothing. Some said prayers. Others just called my name again and again. And then someone whispered that I had been found. No one could say who. There had been no footsteps, no voices. Only that when my father turned, I was lying in the middle of the field, curled up, eyes wide open, my skin cold and damp, alone. He carried me to the hospital himself. Even when I was being admitted, he kept asking the nurses, the neighbors, who had brought me back. No one answered, because no one knew. For months, I didn't talk about that night. I avoided the field. I avoided Dusk. And sometimes, when I looked at familiar faces, I looked too long, just to be sure their eyes still held something human. What if the thing calling your name isn't human? Would you have followed him? Let me know in the comments.